Hello and welcome to this webinar on how to play the piano for hours without needing music. What I'm going to be doing in this webinar is I'm going to be through a series of different lessons, different days. I'm going to show you how to add on elements so that we can get something that sounds pretty sophisticated, something like this. All right, so now, how do I do that? Well, we're going to go through that. I'm going to show you step by step. So the first thing I want to ask you to do is make sure that you have the handout, all right, the worksheet handy. Make sure you have a pencil or a pen so you could fill this in. Also, what I'd like to ask you to do is for at least the next 45 minutes for this lesson, really just put aside everything else. Like really just focus on this if you can. I know some of you may not be able to do that, but if you can, really try and focus just on this lesson and turn off other distractions. All right, so let's get into some music here. All right, so the first thing that we're going to start with is our diatonic triads. Now, some of this may move easy for some of you in the beginning. As it progresses, it's going to get to be more difficult, more challenging as we go, because I'm going to be adding on more advanced concepts. But for right now, let's just start simple. All right, what is a diatonic triad? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to get our scale. So here you can see I have the notes of my C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right, so now on your sheet, take a look at number 1. You see that it says that a triad is a blank note chord. A triad is a 3-note chord. So to create a triad, if we start with our simple 5-finger scale, C, D, E, F, G, if we play the first, the third, and the fifth notes together, that creates a triad. That is what we call a C major triad. To make it minor, we would flat the third. Okay? So C major triad. All right, so now we have our major scale. If we create triads on each note of the major scale, we have what's called our diatonic triads. So take a look at number 2. When we build triads on each note of our blank scale, all right, using only notes from that scale, this is called our diatonic triads. So let me fill this in along with you. So right up here, let's see here. Okay, so this is a 3-note chord. When we build notes, when we build triads on each note of our scale, and let me just make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Using only notes from that scale, this is called our diatonic triads. Okay? And basically a diatonic means everything between the roots of the scale, so from C to C, all right? So we're only using notes from that scale. So in the key of C, it's all white notes. So building a chord on each note of the scale using only notes from that scale. So in the key of C, it would be all white notes. And you'll notice that these chords have a pattern to them. It's a major chord, minor chord, major, major, minor, then diminished, then major. Now I have a bunch of lessons on the site if you really want to dive deeper into diatonic chords. Just do a search for the word diatonic and you'll come up with a bunch of stuff and you can dive deeper into this. Let's move on though, okay? So now you'll notice here we have C, F, and G. That's our 1, 4, and our 5 chords. So if I number these chords here, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. The 1 chord is major, the 2 chord is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished, and then 1 is major. Okay? So the 1, the 4, and the 5 are our major chords, our major triads. That's 1, 4, and 5. Now, I'm sure you've probably heard those chords before. You know, we've heard those patterns before. It's what we use in the blues. And you hear these chords played a lot in all different types of music. Well, this is where we start. When we're going to just sit and play, let's start with something simple and make sure that we have the basics down. So let me just put on my drum beat here, and let's just play along with this. 2, ready, go. Okay, so now you'll notice that I am playing what in the left hand? I'm playing an octave, right? And I'm just playing the root of the chord in the left hand in octaves. So C, then F, then G. Now these chords, right, are fine. There's nothing wrong with them, okay? But you see how we have to lift our hand? See how I have to lift and I have to move my hand over to that F? I gotta like lift up, and anytime I'm lifting my hands like that, there's a possibility and chance that, I might make a mistake and hit a wrong note. Has it ever happened to you? You know, where you like lift your hand to hit a different chord and you play a wrong note. Now, that's because of how we're playing these different voicings. Okay, so now take a look at number 3 here. A chord voicing is how we arrange the notes of the chord, okay? So when we have this chord right here, this is what we call a root position chord voicing, because the root of the chord is on the bottom, all right? Remember, this is the root, the third, and the fifth of the chord. Root, third, fifth of the chord. Root, third, fifth of the chord. Okay, so this root position chord is one way of arranging the notes of the chord. Okay, we can arrange notes in a different way. We can arrange chords in a different way. All right, so let's go over here and let's fill this in. So a root position chord is when the root is in the bass. Okay, root is in the bass. And then when we say root is in the bass, I'm just thinking in terms of my right hand. Forget the left hand for right now, okay? So if I did this, all right, don't worry about the left hand. I'm just thinking right hand. The root is the bottom note of that chord. So when you see this like in the bass, you can also think bottom note is the bottom note, okay? So a root position chord is when the root is the bottom note of the chord. Now it says and blank is when the root is not in the bass, okay? And this is an inversion, okay? So an inversion is just when we take that chord and we take that root and maybe we'll bring it up here, okay? This is what we call a first inversion triad. This is a second inversion triad. This is a third inversion triad, right? No. It's the same thing as root position. So a triad only has 2 inversions. Root position, first inversion, second inversion, root position. Okay, so now if you already know your triads, you're like, Willie, I already got this. I don't need to go through triads. Why is this important to me? All right. The reason that it's important is because too often students know their triads, okay? They know how to play their chords, but they don't know how to be able to move around them. They don't know how to they don't know how to move around the chords that quickly. So you need to really know how to move between different inversions of your chords very quickly. That's why I created my whole Piano Essentials program that my members at Piano with Willie enjoy. Each month they get a new Piano Essentials and we go through all of those different inversions because it's that important. Okay. So now let's move on. Let's move back to the sheet music here. All right, so that's our classic 1-4-5 progression. And we can use inversions. Now, way to create an inversion, let me show you a nice trick. So let's say I'm going to go from my C chord to an F chord. All right, so I'm going to put both chords up here just so I can see both of them. I have a C triad down here and an F triad up here. The first thing to do is to find out, do we have any notes in common? So is the C in common? Yeah, okay, so the C is in common. Is the E in common? No, no E, so get rid of that. Is the G there in this right hand? Nope, no G. okay? So this means I can keep C, but I need to get what else? F and A. So I can just move up to F and A, okay? Right, so again, I put both chords up there, and I find notes that are in common. I start with my left first. I start with my the bottom chord here, and I say, all right, is there a C in this F chord? Yes, there is. Okay, so let me get rid of it. Is there an E in this F chord? No. Okay, is there a G in that F chord? No, there isn't. So now I know I need to get these two notes down here. That common tone, the C, I keep it where it is. I don't move it. So now these other two notes are going to move up. So notice the nice, easy, fluid motion between that C chord and the F chord. Now, when I go from that F chord, there's that F chord, and I want to go to a G chord, are there any notes in common? Is there a C in here? Nope. Is there an F in there? Nope. Is there an A in here? Nope. Okay, so now I can, at that point, I can go up to my G chord, or I can go down to my G chord. What I want to go from here to there. So that's a second inversion, root first, second inversion F chord, to a root position G chord. Would I want to do that? Well, no. Why not? Because it's too much of a jump. See how I like really have to jump? Whereas this, see how close I am? Or this one? Now you might say, wait a second, there's a big jump here, right? But the reason I'm doing that is because when I go from this chord back to the C chord, what do we notice? Is there a B in here? Nope. Is there a D? Nope. Is there a G? Yes. So now it makes it easy for me to go from that G chord back to the C chord. Okay? So now I have my C chord. This is a root position triad. I have the F chord. This is a second inversion triad. And then I have my G chord. That is a first inversion triad. Let me play this along with the drum beat here. 2, ready, go. Okay, so that's fine. You know, we're starting to get somewhere. It starts to sound a little bit different than just playing root position, and it's also a little bit easier to play. But obviously, we got a long way to go. All right, so now the next thing here is this. So let's go back to our sheet here. Oops. To create movement, and I could say to create movement in the right hand, but just movement in general, right, in music, rather than just hitting a chord and just staying there. And just before doing this session, I got a email from a student like, what do I do when I have a chord for 2 measures? Well, this is exactly what you do. To create movement, we can break up a chord rather than playing all of the notes at once. So rather than playing all the notes like this, we can break up those notes. One example of this is the arpeggio, okay, which is a technique that you can use in which you're playing each note of the chord in succession, right? So you're playing it in order, okay? So here's my arpeggios. Okay, so I'm just playing 1, 3, 5, 3, then I cross under, 1, 3, 5, 3, and then 1, 3, 5, 3, 1, 3, 5, 3. Now listen to what that sounds like when I put the drums on. 2, ready, go. Now, let me share a brief story with you. This sounds pretty good so far. I mean, that doesn't sound all that bad, and it's pretty basic, right? All I'm doing is arpeggiating the notes of this chord. The story is, there used to be Borders books. It's no longer around, but they used to have music at Borders books. And different musicians would come in and play while people would sit in a cafe and read a book and have a cup of coffee. And I remember seeing this guy with a short keyboard. It was like a 5-octave keyboard. And I kid you not, when all he was doing was... he was just arpeggiating different chords and maybe doing something a little bit fancier like that, okay, which we'll talk about that stuff. But that's all. And he would finish like, and then people would be clapping for him and they loved it. Why? Because it sounds nice. It sounds pretty. This is what I consider to not be heavy lifting, all right? So, you know, like really heavy lifting is like a lot of straining. This isn't heavy lifting. For the listener to listen to, this is pretty easy to grasp and to know what's going on. It's not complex. So a lot of times people like listening to this because they don't have to think too much about, like, you know, like, oh, what is all that? Oh, yikes. Oh, yikes. All of these complex harmonies. No, this sounds nice. So these simple techniques, if played well, really can pay some serious dividends for you. Okay. So now the thing is that you have to make sure that they're played smoothly, and it's not like, you know, you're not like banging on this. You're not stiff, nice and fluid. All right. Now notice what I'm doing here is I'm playing all of these in root position. Right. So here's a different pattern. Right, so going back to my inversions. So going back to my inversions here, root position, second inversion, first inversion G, right? So now listen to what happens when I put the drums on with this. 2, ready, go. Bring it up an octave. So now those inversions change the whole feel once again. Let me go back, let me play root position, and I'm going to do the inversion. So here's root position. One more time. Here's the inversions. Sorry. Next time. Here we go. And go back to root position. Now, the only thing that's limiting me in terms of coming up with new patterns is my own imagination. So now I know these notes. So now what did I do when I played the root position? I started on the bottom, went up, and then came back down. What am I doing here in this different pattern? I'm starting on the top and then going kind of top to the bottom to the middle. All right? I could also go. Now, if you want a great exercise, try playing 3 or 4 different patterns, all right? So here's another one, bottom, top, middle. So rather than top, bottom, middle, do bottom, top, middle, okay? Or so try playing these different patterns along with a beat, right? And then see if you could play it smoothly and move between each of them without a mistake. So let me do root position. Stop, bottom, up, Whoops. Let me explain it first and then I'll do it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop on beat 3 of the G chord. So I'm going to do. Just to give myself some time to think about the next thing that I'm going to do. So I'm going to do the root position. And the next one I'm going to do is this different pattern here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change it, so rather than top, I'm going to go bottom. Okay, so I'm going to try those 3. Here we go, root position. Ready? Go. This pattern. The other one. Root position. Okay, so right there, moving in between all of those different patterns. Now, if you don't pause on that beat 3 of the G chord, you can really get something that sounds quite nice. So listen to this. So now you might wonder, well, how do I move so quickly on that? Just practice that. Just practice moving from the D down to the G. I'm sorry, for the B. So practice moving from the B. Right, so you see I take that one little section there and I just practice moving that, and then as soon as I'm comfortable with that, then I do the rest of the chord. There it is. Sorry. Make sure you're sitting properly as well. Okay. All right, so now let's move on. Okay, so question number 6. All right, or statement number 6. You can create dozens of different broken chord patterns using the notes of the chord. Now, this is important because a lot of times, you know, students will ask me, like, what other notes should I use? Well, start with the notes of the chord, first of all. You can come up with a bunch of different patterns just using notes from the chord, all right? So start there first. You could also do things like... See how I'm not even using all 3 notes? I'm just going rocking back and forth between 2 of the notes. So you keep adding these different patterns, and then notice, that's all in one inversion. Now I could start to try doing different inversions. Right? I could start to speed up my drum beat so that I'm having to play it a lot faster, moving around in between different inversions. Listen to what that sounds like. I just want to play a little of that for you. So like, let's say I put the drum beat up to like 120. Start playing a rhythm. Play with that rhythm. Bring in some straight chords. Okay? So the point is that there's a lot of room to grow even working with your triads. Why do you want to work with those triads? Because you want to make sure that, you know, a lot of times we say, oh, think outside of the box. No, 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 no. I don't want you to think outside of the box. I want you to think inside the box, and I want you to own every square inch of that box, okay? And what I mean by that is, I want you to, like, if I say, hey, play a 1-4-5 progression in the key of C with this rock beat, I should be able to put on just about any tempo. I should be able to have you start on any inversion. You should be able to just play around with that for 5 minutes, just coming up with a bunch of different accompaniments and patterns using just different inversions of the chord and different arpeggio patterns, okay? And then straight chords, right? And in straight chords, I just mean playing the chord, you know, all of the notes, harmonic, not melodic, not broken, just playing the chord, all notes at the same time, right? I could sit down for 5 minutes and just play with this and come up with stuff that still sounds new and interesting for an entire 5 minutes on this. It's not going to be the same old stuff. All right, so you can do that as well. Again, it's just limited to your own imagination. Think about different ways of breaking that up. Here's 2 different ways right here. So you have your basic arpeggio with your root position chords, and then here, broke them up. All right, so now we've been focusing a lot on the right hand. Let's focus on that left hand. Look at what it is that I can do here. Now, I've been doing octaves up to this point, but now look at what I can do here. Now, what am I adding in that left hand? That note there, right? What note is that? That is, and I know it's a G, I know it's a C, I know it's a D, but what note is that? How does that note function on that chord? So if this was C, it's a C chord. That's the root and the root, right? So what's this? This is the 5th, exactly, okay? So now I can add, so adding the 5th to an octave creates a fuller sounding left hand accompaniment. Okay? So now listen to what happens when I add that in. And I don't have to do it on every beat. I could still do the half notes. So now I put the drums on with that, and now let's put the drums at 100. All right, so now let me give you a little pro tip. When you play that second beat, you can hold that C down. So right down here, let me show that to you. So right here, rather than playing this C twice, hold this out. So tie that C. So it'd be play it the first time here, and then this time play just the G and the C, okay? So you see how I'm playing? I'm playing the C here, and then I play just the G and the C, then I play the F, C, and F here, and then just the C and the F, and then the G, D, and B, I'm sorry, G, D, and G, G, D, and G. Wow, that's hard to get out. Right here, and then just the D and the G for the other ones. Okay, listen to what that sounds like. Okay, so again, you can hear how it really starts to fill out that chord. All right? Okay, so now, statement number 7. Just as we broke up the chords in the right hand, we can also break them up in the in the left hand. Okay? So now, you see here we have this left hand broken pattern. So I could do just root, root, 5th, root. So again on C, it's the root, the 5th, and the root. And I play pinky, thumb, second finger, thumb. Same fingering for all of them. Pinky, thumb, second, thumb, pinky, thumb, second, thumb, pinky. And it's probably going to be a little challenging to get from that G down to that C. And it's just something that you keep practicing. Now, as much as possible, you see if you can do it without looking. And then one way in which I do it is I start to feel around these other notes here, these black notes, and that lets me know exactly where that C is without having to look, right? So feeling around these other notes lets me be able to look, lets me be able to see it kind of like in my own head, and I can feel around where those notes are. So this is stuff that you can practice. One thing I used to do is I used to practice in the dark. So turn off the lights, or literally you could put a blindfold over your eyes and try practicing without looking. All right, so anyway, what does this sound like with the right hand added to it? Okay, now, let me put the drums on. Now, check this out. So now I just created a song just using 1, 4, and 5. So I went through a bunch of different patterns there. Okay, so I started with this, you know. But what did I do? Did I play it down here or up here? I played it up here because it gave it a more light, childlike feel to it, like. Right? Nice, light, beautiful feel. And then I could do it again. I can just kind of like, so notice on this one, again, right here, I just held that out. So da, 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 da. So I'm playing, I'm just holding that out for 2 beats. And then I can go in, here I just played straight chords. And then I can do my arpeggios. Back into my straight chords, go up here, up an octave. And just end on my C chord. Real nice, beautiful sound there, just using 1, 4, and 5. Okay? So my challenge to you is do that. If you can't come up with something beautiful using just 1, 4, and 5, just using those 3 chords, don't blame the chords. It's not the chords' fault, all right? So anyone who wants to be a good pianist should be able to make something sound good with very little. Think of a cook, okay? A good cook seems like they can make something that really tastes really good using very few ingredients. Okay? Whereas, you know, it might take me like a whole big recipe in order to make something that tastes really good. They could just like put together like salt, pepper, you know, like 3 things, and then now they have something that tastes like a gourmet meal. Okay? So now, of course, that takes practice. It's not something that you just whip together, pardon the pun, real quickly. You have to learn how to do that. So this is why, notice what I've done here in this first day of the webinar here is that this first lesson, you're really just adding on layer upon layer. So again, you go back into what we had here. So we start with the real basic diatonic, make sure you know that. The 1, 4, and 5, the inversions, the arpeggios, and then breaking up to different patterns. Now adding in the fifth in the left hand, breaking up the left hand pattern, right? It keeps stacking on. But if you don't know this, like if you can't do this, then you're not going to be able to do this. And you're certainly not going to be able to do this. So you have to make sure that you know each level and practice each level. It might have only taken me 2 minutes to explain it to you, but it may literally take you 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months to practice it and really get it in your bones, get it in your fingers, all right? All right, so the last pattern that I want to talk about with you here is this. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm breaking up this pattern, okay, but now there's 2 things to notice. One, take a look at the left hand. See, the left hand is different. This one was root, root, fifth, root. This one here is root, fifth, root, fifth. So this is the... The other one was this. Kind of like the outer, inner. This one is in order. More like an arpeggio. And in the right hand, I'm playing. So I'm just taking those chords, again, those inversion chords, and I'm just breaking them up. So I'm just taking the top 2 notes and then the bottom note. Top 2 notes and then the bottom note. Top 2 notes and then the bottom note. And this is what it sounds like when I play it along with the drums. So there is a whole different accompaniment pattern there in the left hand. Okay? So let's review what we have in the left hand. Well, actually, before we do that, let me break it down for you so that you have a better understanding of how to see this. All right? And let me tell you how I see it. When I look at this, I look at it very logically. So rather than this being... Rather than that being just, oh wow, somebody's just playing around here. No, there's very logical pieces to it. So let's talk about what those pieces are. First of all, let's start with the right hand, and then we can go through the music that we have here. All right, so we have what I would consider just to be plain old chords, straight chords. This could be chords in root position or in an inversion, okay? So just plain out chords, all right? This is what we could also consider harmonic, all right, motion, all right? So it's not melodic, it's not like single notes, it's harmonic. It's 2 or more notes playing at the same time. So that's the first thing we could do in the right hand. The next thing we could do is we can arpeggiate, all right? Or we can break up the notes of those chords into different patterns, okay? So we could play a chord, or we could do a broken chord. And then each of those chords, we could play them just in root position, or we can go into inversions. The inversions make it a little bit easier for us to be able to move in between these different chords. It also allows us to do some fun things like moving up and down the keyboard without having to do this like jump and skip kind of thing. So that's the right hand. Chords in the right hand, or broken notes. So think of it in terms of harmonic versus melodic. Okay? So this right here, steal that. So this one right here would be melodic. Okay? So think harmonic versus melodic. So this is melodic in the right hand, this up here, harmonic. Okay? All right, so now in the left hand, we could play just straight up roots, like we have going on right here, just roots in half notes. I could do that in quarter notes, okay? I could add in the fifth, so there's three different things right there. Roots, you know, half notes, roots and quarter notes, root, 5, root. I could break it up so it's root, root, fifth, root. I could break it up so it's root, 5, okay? So you get 5 different patterns right there that you can play around with. Right? Now you might think, well, it's not really 5 patterns. They're all like kind of similar, right? Well, listen to what happens if I do those patterns. So let me just start with the half notes. I'll just arpeggiate in the right hand. And then quarter notes. Root 5 roots. Arpeggiate. Pattern 2. Back. So it's most certainly different. Right? Each one adds a little bit of a different flavor to it. Now, of course, if you're going to keep the right hand exactly the same each time, you're not going to hear as much difference. Where the spice comes in, right? Where the rubber meets the road, as I would say, is when we start to do something different in the right hand and then change around that left hand as well. So look at it in terms of like, you know, different options that you have. Oh, I could do all these different things in the right hand and all these different things in the left hand. So now when you start to shuffle that around, now you can come up with some stuff that sounds really, really cool. Now, what I'm going to be showing you in tomorrow's lesson is I'm going to show you how you could start to replace chords as well. Right? So rather than playing a 4 chord, you can change it into a different chord. Okay? I'm also going to show you how you can start to use your major scale to come up with some melodic stuff as well. And so just messing around with it. Actually, to be honest with you, key of C is actually a difficult key because of the fingering. It's sometimes easier when you do some of those keys that have 1 or 2 black notes in them, all right? Which, you know, as you progress, if you don't already know that, you will soon learn that. All right, so now let me tell you what I want you to practice for tonight. Even if you cannot get to a piano, what I want you to do is I just want you to think through these different accompaniment patterns. So I just want you to think through, oh, okay, I could play that root 5 root in the left hand. Just go through what is the root 5 root. So in C, for the C chord, root 5 root is C, G, and C. For F, for the F chord, root 5 root would be F, C, and F, right? For the G chord, it would be G, B, and D. I'm sorry, G, D, and G. G, D, G. Okay, so G, C, start again. For the C chord, C, G, C, root 5 root. For the F chord, F, C, F. For the G chord, G, D, G. All right, so then think about, okay, well, how can I change those? Like I could do that root, 5 root. So what is that? Okay, C, C, G, C, 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 G, C. You could even just kind of like play it on a desk or something, even if you're not in front of a piano, all right? So just be thinking about what those notes are. Oh, F, 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 C, F, G, 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 D, G, 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 D, G. You can think of the other pattern, the root 5, root 5. So C, G, C, G, F, C, F, C, G, D, G, D. Right? Be able to go through and say them that quickly. If you can't say them that quickly, then you're not going to be able to play them that quickly. Right? The other thing that I want you to focus on is your triads. Really know what are the notes of each of those triads. Okay, C major triad, root position, C, E, G. First inversion, E, G, C. Second inversion, G, C, E. Root position, C, E, G. If you want a good challenge, sing them. C, E, G, root position, E, G, C. First inversion, G, C, E. All right, second inversion, so you could try singing them as well. That would be good ear training as well. Do that for the F chord. Do that for the G chord. Try playing through as many of these different examples as you can. If you want to skip over some of the beginning ones, if you kind of got that, you could do these down here, then great. Focus on these. The two accompaniment patterns in the left hand I want you to really focus on is the root, root, 5, root, or the root, 5, root, 5. You see that I move interchangeably in between those. Okay? All right, so that's it for today's lesson. Be sure to join me for tomorrow for the next lesson. Then that's where we're going to start to go through and we're going to start to get a little bit more advanced. So if tomorrow's lesson gets a little bit too advanced for you, just try and be patient, okay? And if you're an advanced student waiting and chomping at the bit to get something a little bit more advanced, you're going to love because you're going to see all of that stuff in tomorrow's lesson. Now, at this point, I just want to explain a couple of the specials that are going to be going on for Black Friday. So let me show you that. So I'll be taking your questions live in just a second, but let me just show you a couple of things quickly. The first is to get to the Black Friday specials page, just go to pianoandwillie.com/Black Friday. That will take you to this page, and this is our Black Friday specials page. Now, if you've registered for the webinar, which you're watching right now, then you do not have to register again, okay? So as soon as you register for the webinar the first time, you get a notification of all future ones. Now, you'll notice which specials are active, because you're going to see this big orange bar that says now active, and then underneath each of the specials, it'll tell you exactly when it's going to start. So let me zoom in on this for you. Right. So you see that, so this November 19th one, it's going to start in 13 hours and 53 minutes. That's going to be our homeschool piano special. Friday the 20th is going to be our Piano with Willie annual membership special. That's going to be in one day. On the 23rd, that's our Drums with Willie special. I'm going to be making a very special premiere membership announcement on Tuesday, November 24th. November 25th will be our funk piano lesson special, if you haven't checked out that site. On Black Friday itself will be cocktail piano lesson special. Saturday, I have a special organ course that's going to be released. And then Monday, November 30th is going to be our music theory online special. So you want to make sure that you keep coming back to this page because I am going to update this page with brand new things. In fact, if I refresh this page right now, you will see that there is now a video here. Okay? So let me now go ahead and answer any questions that you guys have.